Hi, I'm John Rogers. I created the show Leverage and wrote Transformers, and you're listening to GenreTainment.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of GenreTainment over at sci-fi-pulse-radio.com. We're your hosts, Marks
and Julie. GenreTainment is where we talk about what's happening in the world of film, TV, and web series. We give you interviews with writers, directors, producers, and actors in both independent and not-so-independent creations. Now for this 94th episode, we are speaking with Christopher Leone, the writer and director of the science fiction film Parallels.
He tells us all about this fun parallel Earth-hopping movie. We also discuss his past work, like the sci-fi mystery miniseries The Lost Room.
Now, before we get started with that interview, we do want to point out that the music you just heard at the beginning of the show was a snippet from the theme song for our web series, Reality on Demand. It was a song composed and performed by our friend T. Sean Hardy. And you can find our web series at realityondemandseries.com. Now, let's get started with our interview.
Ronan, it's Dad. You need to come to the building now.
Dad left me a message.
Me too. It was weird.
Something about a building, like get to the building?
Yeah, same.
You have any idea what that means?
I don't know, it kind of freaked me out.
156 Prospect.
That's downtown. It's been empty for years. There's nothing there.
Look at all this graffiti of different Earths.
Avoid Earth 33, the contagion has spread.
What is Earth 1?
What the hell is that? Where are we? What's happening?
Hi, Chris. Welcome to GenreTainment.
Hey, how's it going?
We really enjoyed your new film about parallel universe travel called Parallels,
Yes.
which recently premiered on Netflix. Before we focus too heavily on that film, we do want to learn a little bit more about you.
Mm-hmm.
We know you have a lot of visual effects experience. You also have producing, directing, and writing experience on projects like the miniseries The Lost Room, Wolfpack of
Reseda.
and Suit Up. So how did you get started in filmmaking, and what led you to eventually reach this point in your career with the creation of Parallels?
Well, I've been pretty obsessed with filmmaking since I was a little kid. I started working in visual effects, I guess fairly early on, and I had two careers for a while. I was working as a screenwriter occasionally and working visual effects at the same time. And eventually, I sold a few scripts and eventually made a mini-series for the Sci-Fi Channel, as it was called then, called The Lost Room. And lately, I've been directing more, some commercials, but a lot of digital projects for Fox. And Parallels is the latest one of those. And I wrote the teleplay for that and directed it.
Before we get into Parallels too much, I also want to talk a little bit about your visual effects experience, because you have quite a bit. Rather than list off all those, what was like one of the most challenging or fun visual effects projects you ever did?
Well, I think, I had kind of I started working in film, and my very first job was actually shooting out all of the visual effects, from the computer back onto film with these cameras that would take, I think they originally took like 2 minutes per frame to film out. And that was my very first job in Hollywood, I guess. Eventually I kind of taught myself 3D animation, and I did a lot of pre-visualization for other directors, basically figuring out how to shoot stuff, and I usually did that for commercials. So those are actually some of my favorite projects, just because I don't know, I enjoy kind of working with the camera and trying to find cool shots, when we have the time to shoot them. But that's pre-visualization is my favorite part of the process.
That's great. And did that help shape a lot of your directing style?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I like on the projects I've been doing, they're low budget enough. I don't really have time to do anything that clever. I mean, I think as a result, I think I'm very smart with how I use the camera. I think I use it pretty efficiently, and I've been working with a DP named Bryce Fortner, who's incredibly fast and has a phenomenal eye, and we've had a really good working relationship. So it's probably helped me. Maybe it's helped me that way.
I imagine it.
But
it has,
yeah. But yeah, as far as like the real kind of intricate precision kind of shots, it's like, we just shoot. We've just been shooting way too quickly to do that kind of stuff.
Well, but that efficiency really comes in handy. I know I've been on set, and your heart just sort of sinks if you're on one and you realize the director and the DP don't really know what they're doing, so they shoot like from every angle, the same thing, and you can tell
Oh,
there was
sure.
just no planning or thought whatsoever, and they don't know what they're doing. So like you're just standing there and you do the same thing, and the camera just kind of goes around you at various times in a 360. And it's like, oh no.
They got their covered.
I think the people, I think if you haven't been on set, I think maybe what people don't realize is your biggest enemy is time.
Yes.
And really, what you're buying with a bigger budget is more time.
Yes.
But, I mean, you're buying other stuff too. I mean, you can buy maybe a bigger set and everything else, but the biggest thing is the time. So, you know, the difference between shooting a 2 hours of television in 20 days or a 2-hour movie in 60 days, or, you know, Parallels we shot in 11 days, which is
wow.
an incredibly fast
that is.
schedule. And so, right, and so you really, you know, you have to really make really efficient decisions if you're ever going to get through it, and work with, I think, a team of people who can move very quickly and are really hustling.
Yeah, because, you know, best case scenario, if you don't do that, is just the fatigue sets in and the quality is not as good. The worst case is you just lost your people because you went too over in time.
Or literally just doesn't get done. I mean, scenes don't get shot, and you know, you gotta make the day. So.
Well, let's talk more about Parallels then. We've teased it.
Yes, please do.
No more teasing. So, so tell our audience who haven't seen it yet, which is on Netflix, and I think if it's not already on a video on demand platforms, it probably will be soon. Can you tell us a little bit more about what Parallels is about?
Well, Parallels, it's a science fiction story, and it's about. It turns out there's this building. And it's just an ordinary office building, and you could drive by it every day, and you would never notice it. But it turns out when you go inside, it's empty, and the lobby is full of all this writing, and the writing says weird stuff like, "On my Earth, terrorists flew jets into the Twin Towers on October 23rd, 2001, and on my Earth, you know, weapons have been abolished, or on my Earth, you know, half the population was wiped out by plague, or whatever." And it turns out that this building, if you're in the building at a very certain time of day, it jumps to a parallel Earth. And it turns out the building jumps every 36 hours. So we follow the story of a brother and sister kind of estranged, and the father goes missing. They left them a strange phone call to go to the building at that time. And them and their next door neighbor, they start essentially jumping through parallel worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm personally fascinated by the concept of parallel universes and that subgenre.
Yeah, I like it too, but I really liked the characters a lot too.
Yeah, a lot of my own.
Thanks.
Yeah, the characters are great, actually. Yes, and a lot of my own little writing work here and there has touched on the topic a lot. So I'm kind of semi-obsessed with it in some ways.
A little bit. He gets obsessive about things. He doesn't just like them. He becomes obsessed.
So I'm curious how focused you are on that concept. Is it something that really interests you a lot as a writer?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something I thought about a lot, and a lot of my favorite shows as a kid. I mean, like, you know, Land of the Lost was a big influence, and it had especially the pylons in Land of the Lost, which there's one episode in particular where Holly is kind of transferring from one world to another, and that was a big influence. And it's one of those ideas. I mean, obviously it's kind of a big science fiction idea, and a lot of people have tackled it. And I think when I had the idea for the building, that mechanism fascinated me, and the strangeness of it, and that I think was the way into doing a parallel Earth story to me. Mm-hmm. But I've always wanted to do one, and I had sort of never found the right one until this.
Yeah, and I noticed on the I think on the writings, the graffiti, people were saying on Earth number whatever. So I guess there are some people that have kind of figured it out a little bit or know more about it, so they know which Earth is which, and they can number them or label them somehow.
Well, I like the idea that the building itself becomes this almost Wikipedia page where people are writing their own entries, like their own personal histories, and things they've learned, and that by exploring the building, you may actually discover new information and clues or you think it's a very strange Earth and go, wait a minute, I read about this on the third floor, and go back and maybe find a clue.
Yeah, that was neat. And like I said, I liked the characters a lot. I mean, I like the idea of with the brother and sister, because so many times you see on TV and movies, and Mark's just laughs at me because I'm always like, oh, nobody's relationship with their sibling is that sappy. or they have a brother and sister and there's like weird chemistry because the actor and actress are romantically involved and it's just transferring weirdly on screen as siblings, you know what I'm talking about. Or like they just are ridiculously close, like nobody's that close to their siblings, and so this they seemed like more of a real family. And then honestly, my favorite was the neighbor. He is my favorite character. He's the best one out of all of them.
Yeah, Eric Youngman. Yeah, he's really, really, really funny.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I also like that they start in one place, and I mean even by the end of this story, they've started to expand, but. No, I have a lot of ideas. Harold, I think, in particular, Eric Youngman's character, has a fascinating journey that I want to keep going with that I think is really, really interesting. But, yeah, no, I mean, it's important to me, I think, that, one, I mean, I have a brother and a sister, and we are tight, but we also, mercilessly tease each other. So that's part of the normal fabric of how we even talk to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also really like the idea of characters who kind of have their own agendas that they're pursuing and aren't, that make sense to them and all have their own different needs. And yeah, no, I'm glad you say that. I really like the characters too.
Yeah.
And the neighbor character is a character that adds some comedy to it.
Yeah.
But he doesn't ever go overboard.
But I think he's more the heroic character because, it's like he's a smart guy and he's accomplished, but he became an attorney to help people. And you can tell he takes care of his mother, who obviously isn't well. And he really didn't like the version of himself that was the opposite of that and was looking out for himself, I think his character is more, in a lot of ways, heroic, I think, than the obvious heroic kind of.
Well, I would say this, though, about that character. His very first interaction with another version of himself does not go very well. And I was really proud of that.
Yeah.
The consequences of that.
It did not. It was good.
So where'd you come up with the idea? I mean, you've been doing work with Fox Digital, so obviously you built that relationship with them. But the actual story idea, where'd that come about?
That had actually been kicking around for a while. It started with I just had the image of a girl coming out of an office building into almost a sort of wasteland, more of a kind of green, woodsy wasteland, and that these men with dogs would start to chase her. It was just this one little scene I had. But I've noticed in my writing I tend to start more with tone. And so, for me, that little scene had a very creepy, weird feeling of, essentially stepping out. If you just walked out of a building one day into just a parallel Earth, like how peculiar that was, and the building as the mechanism was obviously really interesting, but that was it. And so then it just got me thinking, well, how would the building work, and what would the mechanism be? And that's the part that initially always fascinates me, is really the rules and the logic of it, and how would it work. And yeah, and that's really how it got started.
Cool. Now we did mention a little bit about the characters, and if you want to talk a little bit about who these characters are and the cast that you got to play them, because it was a very good cast. Yeah, no,
I think we did really, really well. Mark Hafka plays Ronan, who is the brother, the older brother, who is kind of a wandering fuck up, basically. He's just kind of wandering, and he gets into fights, and he kind of freelances sometimes as sort of an underground MMA fighter, and gets the shit kicked out of him. And he's kind of in a very angry place, and doesn't really fit into the world. So suddenly hopping from world to world, I think, becomes like an interesting thing for him, because he never really fit in to begin with. He's got a sister who was the one who stayed behind when their mother died, and she's more, a little more grounded. She works for a living, and they've been estranged actually until they get a phone call from their father to both come home and then go to this building. Their neighbor is Harold Smith, who lives across the street and has a very painfully obvious crush on Beatrix since they were kids, and who Ronan can't stand. And then as they start to travel, they meet someone else, a girl named Polly, who is also traveling through the building and is much more knowledgeable about it and starts to kind of clue them in on how it all works. Oh, I'm forgetting everybody's name. Jessica Roth plays Beatrix, and Eric Youngman, I already said, plays Harold. Constance Wu plays Polly, and then there's one more main character that Michael Monks plays named Tinker, who's a guy they meet on their first alternate Earth, who is kind of a brilliant, not really an inventor, more like a brilliant guy who can basically tinker.
He can reverse engineer just about anything, yeah.
Yeah, and he's the guy in, this kind of post-apocalyptic world who's like keeping all the machines running and the cars running and is trying to turn the power back on. And actually was very, Michael Monks is really interesting because he grounded the character in a way that I think sometimes when I write villains, they can be a little arch, a little mustache twirling, and Michael really made him believable.
Can I make a confession here? I know he's not a good guy, but I liked him. I mean, he's like this villain, but I liked him. I'm kind of rooting for him in a way. It sounds weird.
No, but that's the thing. I think for me, it's like I think by the end of the story, even though he's really a villain when they first meet him, that you realize, well, he's got his own agenda, and he's not just a villain for villain's sake. He's not just there to torture them. He has a mission.
Right.
And I think when you start to realize what the mission is, suddenly he's not. Yeah, you start to see him in a different light.
He's like crazy like a fox, not just crazy.
Yeah, right. And you kind of understand his reasons for it. It makes sense, even though it's like, oh, right now this is the worst kind of guy to run into.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you kind of get the idea that just about any person living through in the situation that he's in, that situation can turn anybody into that. And you get the feeling that he wasn't ever just a bad guy. He was just
right.
He just got stuck in such a bad place that it was going to make anybody that, just
right.
surviving
and also,
it.
Right. And also for that character, okay, that's what that world did to him. But what do other worlds do to that same character, I think is like a really interesting question.
If it goes to series, is that a character you might revisit?
Please say yes.
Definitely. Yes. Tinker's definitely, you'll see a lot more of him.
And I'm also curious about their dad, the brother and the sister's father, who is the one that got them into all this. And, we found it kind of curious. It was like, that's their dad. Or is it really their version of their dad or another version of their dad?
I think on any parallel world show, that is always the question, right? What version am I dealing with? And
right.
I think
is it really your dad, or is it a guy that is a version of your dad and using you? There's how do you know?
Right. Yeah. No. That is the question. And also, and then in some ways, like, well, even if say, I don't know about this case, but say you meet a version of your dad that isn't your dad, but like, well, in some ways he still is. How much is still the same? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and that's a very peculiar.
And you get to visit the whole nature versus nurture thing, because you get two versions that are fairly similar, but in drastically different circumstances.
Yeah.
You end up with very different outcomes.
Still end up, right. Or they still, despite different circumstances, they still end up basically the same guy. Do they go off in wildly different directions? Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
No, I think that's why, like, a parallel, the idea of toying with parallel Earth is such an interesting idea, because there's so many ways to kind of unfold it.
That's why we keep going back to that idea. Sci-fi fans, we love thinking
that.
Well, to talk about reality too is, do you think the concept of parallel worlds could at all be possible, or is it just pure science fiction?
Well, I don't know, but I'm not.
He's like, it's above my pay grade, man.
Wait, sorry, what was that?
Like, that's above my pay grade, right?
Yeah. Well, because I do read a lot of science, but like, once it turns into fiction, But, there is a lot of science there are scientists who very seriously believe that there's parallel Earths. There's a lot of, quantum theory who think, yes, literally there are parallel Earths. Every decision splits off into a new universe. But yeah, I have no opinion on it. I have no idea. To me, it seems weird, but who knows? The universe is really weird.
Hey, anything is possible. So,
Yeah.
I think it's a cool idea. I'm going to go on record as saying it's entirely possible.
Let's have a fun question, a fun what if.
Okay.
If parallel universes existed, and you could travel to one, what kind of alternate world would you like to visit?
Oh man. To visit or to
visit.
Live in.
Or
I was
either
gonna
one.
visit.
Either or both.
If I was gonna visit one, it would be some world with a really highly advanced technology that I could essentially steal and take home, like cure for cancer or something like that. So otherwise, it's like it'd be cool to visit, but to me, it's like, no. If I'm coming back, I want to bring something back with me.
That makes sense.
That's
my ruthlessly pragmatic answer.
Okay, if you were going to go live, would there be another one you'd want to live in?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely want to live in somewhere, a better version of our world. I think, I personally find global warming, climate change terrifying, not to me personally, but terrifying to what, people in 100 years from now, how they're going to live and look back at us like the biggest assholes ever who didn't do shit about it. Really. I mean, if you look back at the Romans, if the Romans had fucked up the entire ecology of Earth and we were still suffering for it, you would think they're the worst people in the world. And they knew, and they knew, we know it's true.
Yeah.
Anyone who doesn't believe it, anyway, I could go on about that. But the idea that, we are possibly destroying ourselves, or at least really altering things for the worse, and somehow are unable to stop it. I mean, I would like to live in a world where somebody fixed that.
Yeah. Because honestly, I mean, those of us alive now, we're seeing some effects now, and we're having some inconveniences. But in a few generations, I feel really sorry for anyone alive a few generations from now.
They'll be all Mad Max.
Yeah, because it's we're gonna be having wars over water and food and.
It's already begun.
Actually, they've traced
water wars. I mean, the army completely believes it and takes it seriously. So the fact that half the country still thinks it's a hoax, it's not the army. The army's ready. They know it's true. They're getting ready.
Well, there was a report that came out that said they were able to trace the war in Syria back to fighting initially over water for irrigation and just resources for living.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And you start fighting really hard when you're worrying about your family eating and having water.
Yeah.
It's just
we take it for granted.
We do. We're very fortunate.
And it's such a slow motion problem that people can't quite conceive of it or something.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Even though it's happening,
It's just kind of we're immediate people these days. We have very short attention spans.
Especially social media now.
Yeah, so. I know. You read about it, and then 5 minutes later, you're reading something else, and you forgot about it.
Yeah.
If I can't see the effects of Snapchat, it didn't happen. But anyway,
you know what? That's not even funny, but it's just absurd.
But let's. Things sometimes get cut out of scripts.
Yeah.
Or they never make it because they're really more in the planning stage for the character backgrounds, or perhaps.
Or it got cut after it was filmed.
Or it got cut out, or there's histories of the worlds that you just never really touched on. I just wonder if there's any history twists in those worlds that we saw in the movie that maybe didn't make the cut.
There's a few little things. There are a couple scenes that got cut just for momentum's sake, just that they didn't add that much, and we needed to kind of move the film faster, but not too much. We didn't shoot a whole lot of extra stuff. There was a few lines. I know, there's a line that got cut where Polly referred to going to an Earth. They're talking about technology, and she says she went to an Earth once where Rome never fell. That you wouldn't want to live there, but the technology was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Just weird little. I mean, there are a couple comments like that, but I think that's it.
That would be cool.
Yeah. Now I get the feeling that Parallels was originally going to be a
let's
series.
cut the crap. Where are we on a parallel series?
We are. I mean, it is very much. We are very much trying to make that happen. I mean, there's a lot of machinery in the works, but yeah, I mean, we are all really eager to see that happen.
Was that always the plan, that you were hoping that this would be a pilot, jumping off for a series?
Well, we knew it was. I mean, the thing is, I mean, Fox Digital Studios is, we're not a TV studio, and they create content for the streaming world.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we created it knowing that we were going to make more, but not totally sure what form it would take. I always hoped for a series, but we didn't know, would it be another 90-minute installment? Would it just come out as these
a series of movies? Yeah.
Right, or a series is much more appealing to me. I think you can just go so many places with it, and we're very actively pursuing that.
Yeah, I think it would fit very well as a series.
I think so.
And I signed a petition for it, so I know there's a petition out there somewhere for it.
So we've already done that.
Yeah, good. No, all that, it really helps. I mean, just to be able to show, people really want to see more, and that's been very thrilling.
I'm sure you've been thinking a lot about what you would do if it becomes a series. Is there any hints that you would like to give? And this is tricky because I don't want to spoil the movie for people who haven't seen it.
Yeah.
And of course you don't want to give anything away too, any big stuff. Is there anything you would like to explore, I guess?
So with both hands tied firmly behind your back,
right.
Just tease us about something
difficult as possible.
I would say there are a lot of clues in the show that indicate where it's going to go with all the characters. I think if you really look at what you kind of learn about them and where they're going, it says actually quite a lot. Yeah, I guess I can't tell you too much more, but yeah, it would make sense. About a season in, looking back, you go, oh my God, certain things were already in motion. But yeah,
It feels like that. I mean, I really like the show because I feel like it's well, I'm sure you've already heard this comparison, like Sliders TV show.
But yeah, Sliders never lived up to its potential.
I mean, I like Sliders when it came out, and I like those characters and stuff. But yeah, I never really. Your show's got more edge, and it's got more mystery to it.
It's more sophisticated. If anyone liked the idea of Sliders, but wanted something a bit more grown up and sophisticated, I think that Parallels is that.
Yeah, I actually, ironically, I don't really know Sliders. I've seen I think an episode and maybe one or two pieces of another one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not it's not a show I'm familiar with. But you also have to remember that came out 20 years ago.
I know, we were kids.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, TV is a different planet now. I mean, TV is the Wild West. I mean, it's so creative and it's just such a different place now and very exciting. So, so I mean,
a lot of people say.
Yeah, I don't know. TV's cool.
Yeah, a lot of people say this is.
It didn't.
This is the golden age of television, pretty much, with all these, with the success, like Walking Dead, all these sophisticated shows, compared to
I think.
Yeah, compared to Sliders back then.
Which was a good show when we were kids.
Everything was very episodic. Everything had to be wrapped up, each episode. Whereas now people want more complex storylines and story threads.
Well, now we have DVRs and people watching, or at least used to watch a movie on DVD, and now we can stream everything on Netflix, and so now people like to watch serialized shows, which used to be the opposite of what people wanted to do in television.
Yeah.
For the most part. And I think I want to say Patton Oswalt said something like, TV now is like cinema in the 1970s. It's pretty exciting place.
Yeah,
it's an exciting time.
Well, and I think with a lot of these shows that we think of as a bit more sophisticated storytelling, they've rebelled against the idea that they used to say you had to write down to your audience. They used to really feel like you had to write down to your average audience, and I think that now there's more of a push to write up, because we're not that stupid. We'll keep up.
Especially genre audience.
Yeah.
Well, also, I mean, all the business, there used to be all the middle realm of movies where, they used to have these kind of mid-budget movies that they hardly make anymore. Like a lot of that money and that talent is now in television. So TV has kind of taken the place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at like Game of Thrones, right? Game of Thrones, even just a few years before it came out, would have been movies. No one would have even thought of it as television.
Mm-hmm.
But it's amazing. Like, I love Game of Thrones, and I think that it turns out like, yes, it's an amazing format for Game of Thrones. So, and probably much better.
Yeah, I think there has been a shift in the resources because, just about every movie that comes out is a big budget movie. I mean, there's almost nothing.
There's not a lot in between movies.
Yeah, or it's a super low budget independent film, or it's like billions of dollars went into making this huge blockbuster film. And a lot of these actors that hadn't done television in years and years and years for a while now have been going back to doing television.
Yeah, there used to be that whole that line where
you're
either a
I
movie
don't
actor
do television anymore.
movie or TV actor. Now it's not there so much anymore.
Well, the fact that like Matthew McConaughey won the Oscar at the same time he was starring in a TV show.
Yeah.
Is like, that was, I mean, I don't know if that's ever happened before. That was like.
Yeah, I think he should have won.
I was hoping he would win for True Detective.
I like Breaking Bad, but
not as much as True Detective for me.
If that wasn't the last season of Breaking Bad, he would have won.
Yeah.
True Detective is also a great show. And you created Lost Room, and that was a very full of mysteries and very sophisticated storyline.
Yeah, me and a couple other people. Yeah, my friend Paul Workman and Laura Harcum.
We should mention what Lost Room is about.
Yeah, can you tell us some more about Lost Room?
Oh, yeah. The Lost Room is about a homicide cop named Joe Miller, who's played by Peter Krause, and he gets a key. And it's an old motel key that it turns out will open any door. And when you open the door, it opens into this motel room from about 1961. And every time you come out of the motel room, you can come out of any door you can think of, or it'll open a door randomly somewhere on Earth. As a result, it becomes this kind of de facto teleportation machine, but you can't leave anything in it, because every time you enter the room, it resets. So, even if you paint the walls and rip the sheets off the bed, next time you go in, it's all back to normal. And if anything you leave in there vanishes. And at the end of the first hour, I don't think I'm ruining anything for anybody, at the end of the first hour, Joe Miller's daughter gets reset in the room, and so he spends the rest of the miniseries trying to figure out how to get her back. But it turns out the key is just one of 100 objects that all came out of this motel room that had very strange powers. So, for instance, there's a bus ticket, and if you touch the bus ticket, it sends you to this little spot outside Gallup, New Mexico. And they talk about there's a pencil. If you tap the pencil on a table, a penny falls out. That's all it does. But if you tap the pencil all day, you could maybe make $500 a day or more, I guess, depending on your commitment to tapping. But yeah, and so they're just these very strange, some objects are really useful, some aren't useful. There's objects they don't know what they do, but they're all indestructible. And yeah, and some people think, well, if you get all the objects, you can talk to God, and some other people think that they're actually tearing the universe apart, and then other people think, well, maybe the objects themselves constitute God, and so it's a very bizarre mythology, and it keeps sort of rippling out. But yeah, I love that project.
See, I'm thinking that pencil tapping, commitment to tapping, I've had worse jobs that I've made way less than that a day at. So I would be totally willing.
Yeah, that's true. That's not so bad, I guess. $500 a day. It's like, yeah, that's not bad. Yeah.
Kick back, watch Netflix, catch up on Parallels, tap your pencil.
Yeah, you can get carpal tunnel and then you got to switch hands.
Well, yeah, but you can be ambidextrous real quick. It's just tapping.
Yeah.
Now, where'd that concept come from between you and the other creators?
It was actually a combination of two things. One was my friend Paul. He and I used to work at the library at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, and Paul's like a really brilliant guy, but he used to come in with these really hilarious like mind experiments. And one was, what would be the coolest superpower you could have? The greatest superpower you could have with the small superpower with the greatest effect. So, for instance, what would be a minor superhero power you could have that would change your life? And his idea was, well, what if you could just teleport into this hotel room where you wouldn't have to pay rent, you could get room service. It's like you wouldn't have to have a job. You'd just be this kind of you just have this weird magic hotel room in your pocket, I guess. And he also had this idea for power where you could just send someone to, originally it was Fort Wayne, Indiana, so you could teleport someone to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and they'd have a bus ticket back to wherever they came from. So it'd be irritating, but it wouldn't be like this, wouldn't destroy you. You'd be delayed, by a day or two.
Yeah, it's kind of in the middle. So
yeah,
you can get anywhere.
Yeah. And separate to that, I had been working on a movie idea, but I didn't quite know where it was going to go. But it was about this kid who had this like magic glass eye, and there's this kind of battle going on under the surface of the world, in like diners and bowling alleys and stuff. One day we were talking about this, and we just started saying, well, what if these ideas were combined? And then it was like, well, then these magic powers would actually be in an object, right? So this guy's motel power being a key. And then suddenly, then you realize, then someone could steal that from you, and that there'd be people fighting over these things. And that kind of, I like that kind of science fiction where you sort of just break one rule of the universe, basically. Like, okay, these weird objects exist, and then just starting to think about, well, how might that play out? Like all the different ways people would interpret them and perceive them, and some people would kill for the objects, and that was like I find that fascinating.
That is cool.
And
the hotel room's awesome because I still firmly believe one of the best parts of traveling is hotel rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good for a good hotel any day.
It's awesome. Someone else makes your bed. You dirty up towels. You throw them on the floor, and you're supposed to. It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate housekeeper that resets.
Yes. Then you don't have to feel guilty that someone else came and cleaned for you. It's a magic hotel room. It just reset itself.
So on film sets, especially when you got a low budget and you're rushed, sometimes funny goof up blooper stuff happens, right? I'm just wondering if there's any kind of funny story from set that you like to talk about from Parallels.
Man, I mean, honestly, we're moving so fast. There's very little. I think there's one thing where the actors got a little bit of the giggle fit, but. Yeah, I mean, we kind of unfortunately, every film set, everyone's pushing the limits of what they can do typically. I mean, everybody's rushed. Like, you're always rushed, no matter how much a budget you have. You always have, limited time to accomplish things. But on a budget really small like this, yeah, there's just no, it's hard to have fun sometimes because there's just so little leeway. You have to move so quick. But, I mean, I think we have a good time, but at least for me, it's stressful. You're just, it's very, very time sensitive because if you don't get it done, it's never going to get done. Like, no one's going to give you more money or more time. Like, it just has to get done.
Well, and you obviously kept your actors well caffeinated because they didn't get too slap happy.
No, I mean, I think there's an energy to that too. I mean, moving that quickly, it's like, I mean, especially for the actors, like they're acting a lot. I mean, they're not, the wait time is way less than on a bigger project. Like, they're in front of the camera quite a lot, and and that's fun. And like I said, and with stress comes definitely a heightened energy. I mean, we're all, we're all in the game, and I think that's also the good thing when you've cast it well. Like, I mean, actors in a way are like, they're kind of like great athletes in a way where it's, a lot of what they have to do, a lot of the time is kind of preparing, a lot of the time is just waiting around, but then you suddenly shove them onto the set and the cameras are rolling. It's like, okay, now go. And they have to do it very quickly and get it right. And they only have a few chances. We can't sit there, they have to know their lines. They have to do, and then I run up to them like, okay, what if we try one where it's full, and I change it on them. And I might change 3 or 4 things, and then they have to do them all. and it's a really rare. I mean, it's certainly like a craft, but most people really aren't that interesting on camera, and so the people who get actually more interesting on camera, and it's a very bizarre job.
Well, it's strange. It's sort of like doing a sprint and a marathon all at the same time, because it's a marathon.
I may steal that.
Okay, this is it's the long. I mean, you're in for the long haul, but there's all these short sprints in it, and yeah, like you said, you're changing stuff up. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Steal away.
Weird.
Use it all you
That's
want.
Pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. I'll never forget when I made up the marathon sprints analogy that's now famous. Yeah.
All right. Well, we really hope Parallels gets picked up for
yes,
series.
We sure do.
I'd like to see further.
So all of our listeners, go out there and find that petition.
Yeah, I'll put links to everything, to the petition and other stuff.
Oh, also, if you could let us know if you have any other upcoming projects besides hopefully the Parallel series.
I do, but they're all. I have some projects going, but nothing. I'm not sure which one's going to go yet. You can also check out. I have a comic book called We Kill Monsters that came out a few years back.
Oh yeah.
Check that out.
Very cool.
Yeah. There's some things in the works, but yeah, nothing I can.
That's okay.
Nothing I can announce yet.
I understand. Now, and before we go, is there any place online you want to send people to, like where they can find Parallels?
Plug away.
And such?
Let our listeners know where they can find all your stuff online.
Well, Parallels is on Netflix, and now I think it's launched on a lot of other streaming services like Amazon and iTunes. You can, in Lostrum, you can rent on DVD or buy on DVD, but I don't think it streams anyplace. My comic book, it's the We Kill Monsters. You can get basically at your local comic book shop. If you don't have a local comic book shop, I guess you can get it on Amazon or something. And I'm at ChristopherLeone.com, ChristopherLeone. And my Twitter handle is basically the same thing, except there's no E in Christopher, just PHR, because there weren't enough characters when I signed up for Twitter.
Yeah, I know. I've run into that problem before. Not with my name, but
I was going to say, you have a very short name.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been really great speaking with you.
You too.
We wish Parallels all very good luck.
Please keep us updated on anything else you have coming down the pipeline.
All right. Well, yeah, hopefully in 6 months we'll reconvene and talk about how season 1 is going.
How do we get home?
There is no going home. My advice, try not to die.
How does it work? How is it powered? Who's in control?
I don't know!
Who runs the building?
I don't know!
Whoever built it, they're long gone.
Well, then who's running it now?
Don't you guys want to know what this place is?
Where is everyone? Everything's gone!
Run it! Get out right now.
What is the building?
Hi, my name is David Peterson. I'm the creator of the Dothraki language for HBO's Game of Thrones and the alien language and culture consultant for Sci-Fi's Defiance, and you're listening to GenreTainment.
Well, thanks to Chris for taking the time to chat with us, and we really would like to see Parallels continue. So if this story sounds interesting to you, be sure to check it out and show your support on social media.
Coming up on our next episodes, we march towards episode 100.
Dun, dun, dun!
We will be chatting with Britton Valenti, the creator of the sci-fi web series Interrogation. Also, editor, publisher, literary agent, and writer Sean Coyne, who tells us all about his new nonfiction book, The Story Grid, What Good Editors Know.
Also, a fun and geeky upcoming episode when we have the hosts of Super Geeked Up join us as we turn the tables and challenge them with geeky questions. Yeah, that should be fun. Now, before we go, we do want to remind you that you can keep track of us on our GenreTainment Facebook page, Marks' Twitter account, which is at Mr. Marks, our website at GenreTainment.com, or all of the shows at SciFiPulseRadio.com.
So that's it for today's GenreTainment. We'll be back soon with all new guests from our favorite films, TV shows, novels, and web series.
GenreTainment is a production of Alien Jungle Bug Productions.
Until next time. Welcome to GenreTainment. Yeah.
Bad monkey.